just because I think the first session was good and I thought last session was great. So hopefully we didn't scare anybody away, because I really do mean what I say, that when you get past the learning curve of just understanding the nomenclature and navigating the site and, you know, getting that first opportunity, the light bulb goes off and it's so scalable. So it's just such a good opportunity. Let me pull up my presentation here. We're going to do a couple things tonight. I actually broke down a current bid opportunity just to give a little bit better context on you know, how to kind of analyze a current bid opportunity, just so that we're not talking in theoreticals all the time. I know sometimes it really helps to have that visual aid. Let me share my screen. And as Suzanne said too, thankfully it is a little bit smaller or more intimate of a group, so please feel free to ask questions. So tonight we're going to talk about working on the tollway system. And I did include a recap of our previous sessions too, just so that we can review that material and how it relates to all the topics covered this evening. So we're going to go over the registrations quickly, looking at how to navigate the bid opportunities as we went through once before. We're going to take a look at the bid form, the P pages as their reference, which is the proposal on the tollway contracts. We're going to take a look at a rundown of how to look at the submittals and learn a little bit about line item billing for people who may not be familiar, and briefly do an overview of how the final contract value is calculated, and a little recap on contract closeout. So if we've already covered this, I'm just going to go through it really quickly. We've talked about registering as an IDOT subcontractor, and I know last time we went to the screen, so not sure if anybody's had an opportunity to do that, but that is a pretty painless process. We also talked about registering as a vendor in the Illinois Procurement Gateway. Contracts 50,000 and over right now, you do need to already have an IPG number and be a registered vendor. And you would also want to register as a small business set-aside concern, which I know that Suzanne has and her team have trained everybody and communicated that very well. One thing that I did want to add to the presentation that I haven't discussed previously, that you may have heard about also, not to be too redundant, is the Illinois Tollway Small Business Initiative program. So essentially, you submit your application and it's a database that you'll be included. One of the prerequisites is that you are already registered on the Illinois Procurement Gateway. And I've included a link to the application with more detail if you don't already have it, which I feel like you probably all do. And just one caveat or quick communication, that when you do submit your application, you do need the actual IPG confirmation email. So there's no other way to verify that you have that registration. So if for some reason you don't have that information available, or you're not able to find it in your email, we've been informed that you can reach out to the IPG directly to retrieve a copy of that email to comply with the application process. So just a few things to think about. Register as an IDOT subcontractor, register as a vendor on the Illinois Procurement Gateway, and fill out the application for the Tollway Small Business Initiative. And one of the key things I wanted to mention to the group here about the Tollway Small Business Initiative, this isn't relative only to prime contractors. This is relevant for subcontractors also. To participate on an SBI advertised opportunity, and that's a small business initiative, and we'll review that a little bit in the tollway bid letting schedule. You have to be in this register, this directory. So you won't actually be able to work on a project until you're registered in this directory. So I think it's best to get an application in sooner rather than later. We talked a little bit, both sessions, if I recall correctly, about navigating the bid opportunities. Oops. On the Tollway's website, all the most recent bids are posted here. And as we go to this site later this evening, later in the presentation, we'll see that there are quite a few more bids posted right now. Just wanted to do a quick overview of understanding the bid documents. And these all contain links to where you can find this information. The plan contract drawings, the detailed specifications, the proposal P pages, and that's something that we're going to review in depth in a few minutes. The plan holders list, and we can go over that again later this evening if that's helpful, to help target who the subcontractors, primes, and suppliers are that are looking at the opportunity. A link to the IDOT standard specifications and the Illinois Tollway supplemental specifications. And in addition to that, addendums are also part of the contract documents, as are construction revisions after you begin the work. Milestones, we talked a little bit about milestones found in book 2 of the contract documents. Notice to proceed is, when the gun goes off and the project starts. Interim substantial completion is kind of like a mid-completion date, and there are activities assigned to that date. Substantial completion is just what it implies, that the project is substantially complete in accordance with how the specification defines that. And final completion is in between substantial completion, after the punch list has been issued and completed, and final completion can be granted. Liquidated damages are penalties built into the contract in very great detail in the event that through impacts of your own doing, as laid out in the contract documents, may be applicable and deducted from your contract value. All right, now we're getting into the meat of tonight's presentation, and we're going to talk about the P pages and the bid form. We're going to talk about, and I have a visual aid for this, but I just wanted to go through this list very quickly. Remember that the special provision, which is in the detailed specifications, when there's an asterisk, it indicates there's a special provision, and I'll show you this in the proposal pages as well. The pay item number refers to a universal IDOT or tollway number for reference, and this is kind of like I guess maybe the encyclopedia of looking up how to perform the work. So once you get familiar with how to reference these documents, this is going to be your go-to all the time. Designation is the description of pay item. It's just describing what the work is. Unit of measure is how that work is measured and paid. Quantity is referred to the plan quantity, which means this is the plan quantity is what you will base your price off of. Not to say that you don't have to independently do your own takeoffs, because designers make mistakes, and sometimes the planned quantity doesn't adequately capture all the quantity, or maybe there's less on the job than you anticipate. The unit price dollar is the unit price that you're proposing to do the work, and the amount dollar is the planned quantity times the unit price, and that's how you get your proposal. So I put together a very rudimentary spreadsheet just to kind of demonstrate how I would maybe kind of dissect a tollway opportunity, for lack of a better word. And I just wanted to go over, kind of in real time what this means on the proposal page. So this is in my opinion, one of the most important documents, because this gives you the best overview of the items that are contained in the contract. And this is universal, it's on every project. And as I indicated earlier, this SP, this asterisk means that it's a special provision. So in the contract, on or around this pay item number in book 2 of the special provisions, it will tell you something very unique about how you're performing. I shouldn't say very unique, just unique about how you're performing tree removal 6 to 15 units in diameter. So that's how to interpret that. This is if it's different. This is your go-to encyclopedia reference. This designation is a description of the work that you're going to be performing. it's measured in units. So in this instance, it's each tree is 1 unit, and the planned quantity is 883. I just dummied $1 in here, unit price for every pay item, just to demonstrate, that 883 times $1 is 883. So this is actually what you will use to compose as a prime, or even as a subcontractor. As a subcontractor, you would pull out what your items are from this proposal, and that's how you would submit it to the prime contractor. We're going to come back to this sheet in a minute, but does anybody have any questions so far, or does this seem pretty logical? Okay, I'll assume that it's logical. So that's just an overview of the P pages. And I wanted to talk really quickly about taking a look at the submit. Oh, actually, I'm slightly ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I wanted to show you on the sheet how I looking at the different packages. So this proposal sheet, this is the whole project. This is Illinois Tollway contract number RR204554. It's box culvert construction on 294 from milepost 27.8 to 29.5. So this is in the designer's mind and the tollway's mind. All of this work is what it will take to deliver this project. So if I'm looking at this as a prime contractor, I'll take a look at this and I'll put all of this in different packages. There's a tree package, an earthwork package, and a landscaping package. And if you're looking at this as a subcontractor, you're just going to want to identify what items, what package do your items fall under, and extrapolate just those items so that you can work on putting your estimate together. So hopefully that makes sense. And this isn't a science. This is just, how I take a look at it to, like if you're a prime contractor, you're collecting drainage numbers and everything separated into its own respective package, because they don't list it all together by trade. It's just all listed in numerical order of pay item. And one other thing to mention about the pay items, this is an asterisk for a special provision, but there are supplemental BDE provisions as well. So anything that's, like I said, a little bit of a deviation from the norm, GBSP as well. There's all these different acronyms to learn, but they're all referring to IDOT and tollway contract documentation.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back over that far right column and talk about the packages?
Sure.
The importance of allocating those items in the description of the designation section into a package. Mm-hmm. What's the significance of that when you are submitting your bid?
This is really just for internal purposes. So you would never submit this information to the tollway. But if you're looking at this as a prime contractor, you're going to be receiving bid packages on all these different respective subcontracting trades. So you're going to want to have a way to identify them. For instance, I put together for the remainder of our visual aid, I only put together the fence and guardrail package because I had filtered that to only show me that. So if I was the prime, I would collect all my fence and guardrail quotes so that I can compare items and see, as the prime, what I would submit. When you're a subcontractor, learning what items are pertinent to your scope, that's really important to learn. So if you are a landscaper, are you a landscaper that does tree removal? That's not very likely, but you are a landscaper that would most likely apply nitrogen, fertilizer, nutrient. And as you go through these items, you start to learn what all of the different categories are. I'm able to do it just because I've looked at this for, I've been looking at these types of bid documents for 20 years. So I kind of know what package should go into where. But as a subcontractor, you would want to learn, like if you're a water contractor versus a sewer contractor, which part of the drainage is water, which part is sewer. And some of the things are easily identifiable and some of the things are difficult to determine who's doing what. So I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but that's kind of the best I could do of why I think it's important as a prime to organize all this and understand it. But even as a subcontractor, for instance, I used to work for a fence and guardrail company, and with IDOT, 25 of these contracts would come out in one letting. So I would review all 25 of the contracts and I would extrapolate all of my items, all of the fence and guardrail items, all of the pipe handrail items, all the items with fence removal, guardrail removal, anything that looked like an item that I would work on, so I could see if that was an opportunity that I wanted to look at. So as you start to become more familiar with looking at these bid docs, you'll be able to figure out which line items are most applicable to your discipline, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback. Not always sure if I am making sense. So I wanted to talk really quickly about submittals. So as you're performing the work, because I'm referring a little bit back to the bid stage, but what we're really talking about here is, let's say that we already have the job. We have this project. We're doing the fence and guardrail. So learning, the first step would be to learn. First step is to identify your items. Bid the job, get the job. After the contract's executed, now we want to take a look at submitting all of our shop drawings and cut sheets and anything that we need to get approved prior to releasing material or mobilizing on the project site. So you want to learn the submittal requirements by using the pay item number and special provisions. And submittals come in all different forms in excess of what's listed here: plans, shop drawings, cut sheets, and procedures. Like if you're a demolition contractor, you have to put together like a whole demolition procedure. Or if you're a steel erector, there's many components to an erection plan and shop drawings for the beams and things of that nature. And I'm also going to provide this sheet that I'm referencing as a visual aid, and it has links throughout the presentation if it's helpful to use that. So for instance, I know as I'm looking at, we're the fence and guardrail contractor now, that the bike railing would need shop drawings. How do I know that? One, sometimes there's some common, a little bit of common sense into it. Bike railing is not standard. It's very specific, and it's something that will need to be specialty fabricated. So the specialty fabricator would provide those shop drawings. This pay item number, this is the number that you look up on Tollway or IDOT to see what's the material, what should it be made of. Is there, sometimes there's cut sheets of, uniform standard panels, and, that helps give you the foundation of what's acceptable to utilize. On other items, like more specialty items like electrical work, sometimes they specify specifically in the special provisions. And remember, that would be indicated here. Specific manufacturers you would use for luminaires or light poles or things of that nature. So it isn't really, you're not really taking like a stab in the dark and hoping that you're pricing the right material for the work. This is your guide to see what's the material. It also gives you what are the acceptable means and methods to install the work. If you are, there's nothing relevant here, but right away fence removal, sometimes it's required that you backfill the fence holes. So there's all different kinds of things that you need to learn that are associated with these pay items with your respective scope. But every time on every project, the guardrail removal is going to be 632-00310. Once you learn all about the guardrail removal and if you need to salvage the panels or what you need to do, it's the same application on every project. So while it's overwhelming at first, it soon becomes second nature because you know your items. So always put and I'm sure everybody does this practice in their business currently, but always make sure that you give yourself enough time to get your submittals reviewed and approved. If you're a subcontractor, you have to submit them to the prime. The prime has to submit them to the owner's rep. The owner's rep has to give their recommendation to the designer. So it has to change so many hands by the time it gets back to you. So you definitely want to put yourself in a winning position. Oh, I guess I got a little ahead of myself. So the prime or the GC prepares the submittal, and you likely send it via email. Submit it to the prime via email. The prime contractor submits it to the owner's representative. That's the engineering firm that represents the agency. And that's in a system called eBuilder. So you can see, you can see that there's so many channels that this needs to go through before you can get the approval back, or sometimes even the rejection. Then you're in an even more compromising position if you're getting your submittals in too late. So the sooner you can send your submittals in, the better. Anybody have any questions on submittals?
This is Suzanne, I do. So the submittal comes after the contract's been awarded?
That's correct. After the contract's been awarded and all the subcontracts have been executed, this is like your next line of defense for project success, to just get all of your, bombard whoever it is with all your submittals, because they contractually, they have only a certain time to be able to get that back to you. And so you're kind of, anytime when you're like volleying like that, you want to make sure that you're putting the onus, back and forth, and that you don't want something to sit in your court outstanding too long. If you know that you're mobilizing in March of 2021, sending your submittals the third week in February is not, it's not a move that will set you up for success. So normally you have much more time than that, but just some words of caution.
I have a question. Is the COI or certificate of insurance part of the submittals, or is that like something that we submit prior when we're bidding? It has, to me, sometimes they request the insurance and they ask for all this additional insurance and everything when we're bidding, and I don't find it like helpful, because if we don't get the job, I don't want to request a COI, so I just send them a sample one. So I just want to check if like submittals should be, like COI should be part of the submittals as well, and not of the pre-bid or the.
No, you're absolutely right. Like I think your approach of just giving them evidence of coverage, it should be more than adequate in most instances. And the certificate of insurance, if you're a prime, that must be submitted and approved prior to award of the contract and the notice to proceed. And when you're a subcontractor, the actual certificate of insurance with all the adequate coverage and appropriate additional insured, that comes at the time of subcontract execution. So that's actually in advance of the submittal process. The submittals are for the tollway are more for material, temporary and permanent material and processes involved to perform the work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so here's my favorite topic, and I think it's really important to understand line item billing. So all those lines in the proposal, those are referred to as line items. And I've seen so many people kind of take a misstep, not understanding how all of this is supposed to work. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on this. And this is really good to know in your mindset too, as you're looking at bidding tollway opportunities or any tollway, CDOT, IDOT. So I just want to go over the life cycle, which is to install the work, after your submittals are approved, install the work. You agree to the work installed in place, which are the quantities. So just because I have 300 linear feet of guardrail removal on the contract, that doesn't mean that, or I should say 3,000, that doesn't mean that I have all 3,000 linear feet of removal available to me the first day that I go out. So you want to measure any removals in place with whoever the owner's representative is, and make sure that you're in agreement on the quantities that were installed in place. You would then submit material certification. And material certification can sometimes be different than, it is different than submittals. Submittals are, here's my product, please approve my product. Material certifications are the actual either bills of lading that accompany the material, or and or a certificate indicating what I told you that I was going to install for you is actually what I installed. So it gives all the details from the manufacturer, and this is a really common practice. So anybody who furnishes DOT type material is familiar with providing material certifications. You would bill and track internally, and we'll go over all of this in the sample. So you've agreed to it in the field. Internally, you're like, okay, we know that we removed 800 linear feet of guardrail, and the agency's owner representative concurs. Then we would bill the work. So if you're a sub, you want to bill that to the prime. If you're a prime, it's going to go on the pay estimate. This is a link to the tollway pay estimates. For every contract, whether it's engineering, professional services, or construction, you're able to see online what the pay estimates, what's been paid on the job. So, if for instance, you're a subcontractor to Passion in this instance, you're able to look at the actual final, looks like it's a final pay estimate. So you're able to look at what was paid through what date to make sure that your items are on there. So of course the one I chose is not being cooperative, but it's a really, really good tool. And it's a really good way, it's a good thing for people to learn to navigate. Okay. Because once you learn to navigate this, for instance, if you say you agree to some pay items through a certain period and they say it's going to go on the estimate, you can be checking this website, and you're tears down from, being able to have that conversation to ensure that your line items actually did make the estimate. So it's super transparent. It's really helpful. And this, the light bulb can go off in your head and say, okay, this is a problem. I didn't make this estimate, because now the whole process is set back at least 6 weeks from there. So we'll get into a little bit more of that, but I did want to make sure that you had this link and aware that it is a tool for you to use to be able to see what payments are going through. There's no secrets when it comes to that. So that's the initial life cycle, and you go through this life cycle until all your work is complete. I hope this is making a little bit of sense, and hopefully this visual aid will help a little bit more also. So everything goes back to the line items, which we've already reviewed a little bit. And this quantity, this is the planned quantity. And like for instance, guardrail removal, 3758. It doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be 3758 on the job. The removals likely almost always go more. So, removals, you go measure them on site, and as you remove them, you agree to the quantities. So you're not billing the whole quantity in the first mobilization. You're only billing what you installed and agreed to. So this would be how you would come up with your first billing. And again, this is a super rudimentary spreadsheet that I just threw together, for a good visual aid. But this is your first billing, and the period started on the 1st of January 2021, and it ended the 15th. So this isn't any work after the 15th. This is only the work through this period. That doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have more work to put on there, but on this estimate, only work through the 15th can go on the estimate. The frequency of the billing and the pay estimates differs from project to project, based on if it's a larger contract, they will process a pay estimate most likely bi-weekly. Sometimes they only process it monthly. So if you think about it, if you're mobilizing today, and let's say that goes through the 31st of January, you're not going to you have to agree to the quantities, and the pay estimate will likely not be submitted for at least 2 or 3 weeks from there. And by the time it circles everywhere that it has to go, you are talking about a 5 to 6 week process. And that's, the tollway is very quick at getting that process turned around. But then if you're waiting for the prime to pay you, you really want to make sure that your items get on the pay estimate when they're supposed to get on the estimate. I hope that makes sense, because you're basically missing your opportunity, and your opportunity to get paid in a timely manner. And the only way, because then you're playing catch up after that. So you really you don't want to wait for another cycle. So this keeps going, this whole cycle keeps going until you're done with the project. So it's always good to capture what you've billed previously, what you're billing this period, and this is the start of the period, and this is the end of the period, just so that you know what you've billed thus far and what you have remaining. Setting up a system like this also helps you realize that you might have gone over on what the planned quantity was. That all has to be adjusted on the tollway side. So it's really important that you make sure that they're processing line item adjustments also. So this is really just the function of how the money continues to flow and how the billing goes. So I hope that offers a little better context on what it means when we talk about line item billing.
Question, with that little example where it was two items over, would a change order be required in that instance, or is it simply a matter of letting the CM know that this is going to be coming?
There's a couple of different types of change orders. When it's a minimal line item increase, I think there's like an allowance or a balance, a little bit of extra money in the contract, like a percentage over, where you can go X amount over and they can just process the line item in-house and put it on the pay estimate. If you go way over on that existing line item, then they have to do a formal line item increase. And so you're waiting for the balance of that, for that to actually fund. So that could take even longer. So if you're looking at a job and right away we call it a bust in the quantity, and that the quantity is insufficient for you to do your work, that's RFI number one the second you get the job, because you want to get ahead of that process to make sure that there's adequate funds for you to be able to go do your work. There's also instances, beyond line items and planned quantities where they'll ask for a lump sum unit price if it's, a specialty type item. And there's also what they call force account, which is time and material. So if it's something that's outside of the specifications, there's a form in different time and material rates and equipment reimbursement and material markups. And all three of those things are tracked separately.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the final contract value. So the life cycle, address disputed items and quantities. You may have an instance where you guys are not in agreement with the quantities measured in place, or, earthwork's always tough, or anything that's measured in square yards. Concrete work is sometimes the volume of it. So these are all things that you want to do your best to make sure that you have a good approachable rapport with the owner's representative, and that you're calculating everything. The owner's representatives do what's called, they do IDRs, which are the inspector's daily reports. And this includes all the observations of the work being performed in their calculations. So you are entitled to look at that information. So if you come to the end of a mobilization or the end of the job, and they're at 300 feet and you're at 600 feet, and you guys just can't get it figured out, you're entitled to be able to look at that IDR to try to figure out where the deficit is, and ask to have a field meeting to go measure something, or whatever is relevant to the cause. So just so you know that is you are entitled to see that information. You address any line item increases, as we just discussed. That's when there's an overage, change orders or force accounts. That's the time and material. And you agree to the final quantities, which composes the final contract value. And I think I've said this quite a few times before, but do that as soon as you can. Because if you're a subcontractor, and if you're a prime contractor, if you're a subcontractor and you go in at the beginning of the job and you get all your work done and everybody pats you on the back, nobody's going to want to talk about your work 8 months from then when they're in the thick of trying to get everything done in substantial completion. So get in, get agreed. You can't get paid everything right away because there might be some increases that need to be processed or change orders, and you still have 10% retention. But get it agreed to while it's still fresh in everybody's mind. If you're a prime contractor, it only works in your favor to keep on top of subcontractors agreeing to their work as they perform it also, because you are inevitably responsible for closing out the entire job. So I think the same concept applies to everybody involved. To agree to the final quantities and the final contract value, sign off on the final contract value, everybody's in agreement. And then you can utilize that tool of being able to look at the tollway's estimate to follow your final quantities to ensure they're incorporated into the pay estimate. So you check that website every month and say, I still don't see my line item increase reflected here, and keep on it and figure out, what's happening with that. So the tollway, in the spirit of transparency, they really do give you a lot of tools to be successful at any tier of subcontracting if you learn how to navigate their system well. So I just wanted to give you, and again, these are not formal templates. This is just something I kind of put together for a visual aid. So here we have our plan quantity that was from our P pages. And this is actually the final contract quantity that was installed. And these are two really important numbers because some of them you'll go over and some of them you'll go under. Maybe some of the line items didn't materialize at all if a section gets deleted or they didn't know that another contract had already installed that. That happens sometimes. So you need to make sure that for your own internal purposes, you're not recognizing, there's not a huge disparity here, but when the unit prices are more than $1, there could be a very big difference. You want to know the difference between what was your planned contract value and what was your final contract value, so that you're not, 90, 120, 150 days from then thinking that you're still going to get the delta of what's owed to you when your contract value could have been less, or vice versa. So that's a really important distinction. I hope that makes sense. And just really briefly, I wanted to go through contract closeout as well. I know we talked about this. Negotiate and agree to your final quantities, extra work and change order values as soon as your work is complete. I know I'm being redundant, but it's so important. Communicate when you're submitting your final certified payroll, or else people will be expecting it or asking you for it, post final completion, and may even be withholding payment because of it. Be prepared to execute your punch list work before the final completion milestone dictated by the contract. So you may think you're done, and then you hear 6 months, 8 months down the line that you have work on the punch list. So communicate, try to be a part of that process. If possible, I would just get that done at your last mobilization so you don't have to worry about it. And make sure to be maintaining and submitting any project as-built or warranties as soon as your work is in place. Again, while it's fresh, while you have your suppliers engaged, because we all know everyone's a little bit more cooperative at the beginning of the job, and especially when there's outstanding dollars. And that's all I had on the presentation this evening. Hopefully it was, again, it's a lot of information, but hopefully it was really helpful. I just wanted to, we spend a lot of time on looking at bidding opportunities and how to interpret certain things, but I wanted to make sure to give you some good context of, what it's like to actually build and bill the project. So hopefully that was helpful.
Is the standard for substantial completion a certain percentage of the work completed?
Substantial completion is normally everything's done. And except for like establishment of, you know, landscaping items, or maybe there is an adjacent contractor situation and your final completion is contingent on them doing theirs. So they'll qualify that in the book too, in the you know, the substantial completion and final completion dates. They'll let you know exactly what the expectations are, so
Okay.
that none of it's a surprise.
All right.
And definitely live and die by those dates and those numbers, and be conscious, you know, durations rather, be conscious of who's impacting progress. Is your progress impacted because a submittal's in somebody else's court? Did the prime sit on the submittal and not send it, you know, on time? Is there a weather impact? Did you forget to release your material? Like, always be conscious of, you know, who's holding up the show, because if you're late on those contractual milestones, liquidated damages could and will be applied. So it's really important to think about that. Does anybody else have any questions on the presentation?
Hi, Dana. This is Debbie Walter. How are you?
Hi, Debbie. I'm well. How are you?
Good. I have a couple of questions. Since this is all new to me, when you're submitting a bid, is there somebody that can help you to make sure everything that you're submitting is, you know, to the T, that you haven't missed anything? Or do you just automatically submit that to your prime? Or if you are the prime, automatically submit that?
A little bit of both, and I think it all depends on the circumstance. Thankfully, if you're submitting as a prime, and I will say from experience, you know, years ago when we didn't have checklists in the bid forms and, you know, electronic prompting to kind of make sure to push us in the right direction, like when you're doing it electronically, it's, oh, I need an attachment here, or you know, before it was just kind of figure it out and hope that your bid would be deemed responsive. And, you know, there's been a lot of instances where one T wasn't crossed or an I wasn't dotted. So as a prime, you know, the Tollway does a really good job in their contract documents, and also in, you know, the support that they offer through the technical assistance program, helping people with those checklists to make sure they have all the right registrations, to make sure they're checking all the right boxes, and to make sure that they're really understanding, you know, what they're committing to do when they submit a job as a prime. As a subcontractor, it really depends on the relationship with the prime. I mean, I know some people will submit, some of the people that I worked with in the technical assistance program, you know, they were really struggling because their work was never competitive, and they would barely even get any feedback on that, you know, and it was really just analyzing why, you know, is it the right labor? Are we utilizing the right material? And you can really you can get that feedback by looking at historical bid prices, which I think we covered before. That's always really helpful in an estimating exercise. You know, if you put together your costs and your unit price and what your whole whole proposal is going to be, you can cross-reference that with historical unit prices and say, whoa, I am not even close to the ballpark. And sometimes, you know, it's difficult to measure it because it's not apples to apples. It's not the same location. Sometimes it's not the same year, but that does help you measure that a bit. But it really is just developing a relationship with the prime and, you know, learning from experience and, you know, the support of TA agencies to help you really figure out, you know, do I need to do, you know, I'm not including traffic control, but I'm going to need 10 lane closures. So you want to communicate that to the prime and let them know you're excluding that, but you need it, so that in their budget for lane closures, they're capturing that with the traffic control subcontractor. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it has. I do have another question. If I know that we didn't get any at least I didn't get any like notes or minutes from last session. Is it possible to still get those? And then will we get the notes from this session as well?
I believe Suzanne and
I have all of the notes from the last session and the recording, as well as this session and the recording, and I'll be sending both weeks out next week.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments or things maybe they were hoping to learn at the conclusion of our series that hasn't yet been covered?
I have a question. If I'm providing a bid to service company in my trade, like for, let's say for cleaning, did I also have to submit it as you were like showing with like an item number and what's it called? I forgot. Like I was looking at the spreadsheet and I forgot the line. How do you like
A line item?
line item?
No, because that's actually a really good point. What's included in some of these pay items is what they call incidental. And incidental means that everything, they assume because they give you the pay item number that you know everything that goes into that project. So Liliana, like a project that you would be involved in where you're providing industrial cleaning services, you would likely be involved in, post-construction cleanup, like in a facility maintenance construction. Your work is incidental to delivering that product. So you wouldn't be subject to the same line item type situation. You could submit lump sum. So, and again, we're talking in theoreticals here. So it always depends on the situation. And I'm also noticing as of late that the tollway is breaking some of the smaller contracts out a little differently. So everything can change with a newly posted opportunity.
Okay, no, because sometimes we have to submit pricings like by square footage or, so I don't know how they work. I have not submitted, I haven't had the opportunity to submit anything to Tollway, so I'm new to this too. So I'm just trying to figure out how to do it as well. But thank you.
Of course. Sorry, I couldn't give you a more direct answer. I do want to just remind everyone, everything I'm sharing too is really, it could be subjective, it is experience based, but I do have a pretty vast amount of experience in assisting subcontractors and first time primes, and I have worked for some larger prime firms also. So I do have some educated suggestions or experienced suggestions, I guess I could say.
Were we going to actually go onto the Tollway website and look at a specific opportunity? Were you still going to do that?
I analyzed a specific opportunity. We can look at the one that I was looking at if that's helpful, just like we did last week, just going and navigating the Tollway's website and looking at that opportunity. And then you also wanted to review the letting sheet as well, right? Oh, I think you're muted.
I muted myself. I think the order is perhaps to look at the letting just briefly so they can understand it, because this is something that is more detailed and more comprehensive than any letting that has been sent out.
Okay.
Going to help them understand why being a part of the Small Business Set-Aside Program and being a part of the SBI program, having those registrations are going to be important. And really looking at this most recent letting, it's going to be very crystal clear. And then what I'd like you to do is to take one of those opportunities and let's go onto the website and take a look at how they bring up the contract opportunity.
Okay, that's a good plan. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to review the letting sheet as we did last week. And I think maybe they've even added more layers of detail on the information. So again, here are your keys.
Before you start, can you blow that up?
Sure. Is that a little better? Okay. So the key, they offer you the cost magnitude, which is very helpful. So you know the range of what the opportunity might come in at. This SBIP is the Small Business Initiative Program, and there are 3 different tiers. The first tier is work under $1 million. The second, between 1 and 3 million. The third, between 3 and 5 million. And again, as we said earlier, to be a subcontractor on an SBIP opportunity, you must also be on the Tollway's SBI registry, in the Tollway's SBI registry via an application process. You also have what's called the SBSP, which is the Small Business Set Aside. And the SBIP is the Small Business Initiative that we were just talking about. ROSIP is the Rolling Owner Controlled Insurance Program, and that enables the prime contractor, or requires rather, that the prime contractor utilize the Tollway's rolling insurance program respective to general liability, because the limits were prohibitive for small businesses to procure that type of coverage. So this is the key is always really good information. We'll just start with the first opportunity, and then we'll go look at some SBSPs. The route, that's the part of the tollway that it's on. So this is 294. Main line means on the actual tollway. This is the Toll Plaza 39, or Toll Plaza 39 to 75th Street, and here are the mileposts. Project number is the contract number. This is when the opportunity advertised to let everybody know that it's available. It goes on the Tollway's website. And this is when the bid opened. This is when the board reviewed it. And this is when the estimated notice to proceed was. And this is that milestone, the NTP milestone in the contract. The contract completion date is December 14th, 2022, and the cost magnitude is $75 to $100 million. So that's a really big job. So we'll look through these, the SBSPs and the SBIPs, just so that I want to point out a couple of differentiations here that might be really helpful. And then if there's a specific opportunity of the on the SBI or SBSP that we wanted to review together, I'm happy to do that as well. So this opportunity in particular on I-88, it's a landscaping type project, planting on I-88, Illinois 26 to Illinois 251, contract number 4468, and it advertised August 20th. Oh, this already bid. Okay, so they leave these on there until the notice to proceed is granted. So we will just keep going here to something that has not bid yet. Bid opening dates. Okay, let's start with M8. This is a maintenance facility. Liliana, this might be a project that you might have some post-construction cleanup work. So I don't know, I haven't looked at this in depth. I don't know if this is demoing an existing one and building a new one, or just building a new one, but this might have some more vertical opportunities as well as horizontal opportunities. It's on I-88. It's the M8 maintenance facility, westbound access road. Contract number 4544, advertised January 21st, and it bids on February 23rd, which means that whoever the apparent low bidder is, if their bid is found responsive, it goes to the March 21st board, or March 25th board rather, and that the NTP gets issued May 20th of 2021, and that the substantial completion is May 6th, 2022. So this says it's an SBIP 3, which means that the cost magnitude is between 3 and 5 million, and that it has a ROSIP insurance policy. So this means both the prime and the subcontractor must be an SBI registrant, and those are firms whose annual volume does not exceed $14 million, and they have to go through the tollway application process. You cannot be utilized on this project unless you are an SBI registrant, which is why there's been such a big push fourth quarter of 2020 to get these the announcement in January to get these registrations in for current bid opportunities. And Suzanne or Aiton or Diana, correct me if I'm wrong, But I believe as a prime, you, at the time of bid, when you submit your bid, you have to be a registrant. If you are a subcontractor, you have to at least have the application submitted and pending, because they don't determine, if subcontractors can be approved until after NTP anyway. So
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
thank
correct.
you.
That's correct.
So I don't think that's a good reason to not submit an application now, but just so people who are primes and subs are just really understanding, the rules of engagement here. I think it's really important, the more you know, the better. So just going down the list here, there is a difference between the SBI P3 and the SBSP. SBI is the Tollway's own program with the 3 tiers and the SBI registrants. SBSP is the small business set aside. And again, please somebody correct me if I'm mistaken, but the SBSP does not have DBE or VBE goals. And
Right.
I
Correct.
don't believe you need to be an SBI registrant to participate in those contracts, but you do need to be IPG and SBSA registered.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad we're all on the same page. So that is, there is a difference between these two. What's really cool, about the SBIP, first of all, the SBSP was the gateway into small business set aside, which is setting aside contracts for small, to give small and diverse firms a chance to prime, to steer their own ship. And without that, you can't just go do a $20 million job, no matter how much experience you have or capability when you're starting out your business. So it's just it was a really cool way to give people that opportunity. And I've seen, people grow exponentially the last 2 years in that program. So the Tollway took it a step further and said, we're going to do these 3 tiers, and we're really going to encourage small businesses to work with small businesses in the, $1 million, $1 to $3 million, and $3 to $5 million. So because there's it kind of levels the playing field, because there's smaller businesses that are in all different stages of their journey with the Tollway. So, I think that some of the experienced contractors who have, small business contractors who have 4 or 5 jobs under their belt as a prime, they could potentially dominate the whole SPSP, all of those opportunities. But now that there's those 3 tiers, it really gives other people, I think, a fighting chance to be competitive. So I think it's really, really cool. So on the SBIP and the SBSP, we have the M8 maintenance facility. We have the landscape planting. We have a system-wide fiber optic construction, system-wide ramp queue detection, and plaza modifications. Whoa, there's a lot on this. Plaza modifications again, more plaza modifications, and another planting job.
This one is the most detailed and the one that has set the most opportunities aside for vertical construction. And that's really why I wanted us to go through it, because it is substantially more opportunities here than was on the one that came out on the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
So
the plaza, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that the plaza modifications in the M8 maintenance facility, they're going to have many more vertical construction opportunities, as Suzanne's saying, than we've seen maybe all of last year. So this is big. So it looks like nothing's advertised yet. This plaza modification one comes out next week. So that'll be a really good one to look at to kind of see how these are structured. Because I don't know if they're going to be, there's a lot of different ways they can structure it. If it's going to be kind of like a task order, work order, or if it's, different stretches of the plaza and they want, all these different things. It'll be really interesting to see how that's structured. But these plaza modification jobs, so like this one, this is less than $1 million. And then this one's 1 to 3 million. So, you know, these are very different opportunities and in different areas also. You know, DeKalb and Dixon need to be conscious of, you know, prevailing wage is completely different out there with the counties as well. So they all have their own considerations and challenges, but I think they're going to be really cool projects. So let's see if there's one that's currently advertised that we would want to take a look at. So I don't know if anybody in the group has interest in a fiber optic job, or I think we have a landscaper in the house. You might want to look at M8. Suzanne, I'll let you choose if nobody else would like to.
88.
You want to look at that M8? Okay. All right. Let's switch screens. Now we're really getting down to it. Let me just pull up the Tollway's website. All right. And if you do, this is a recent addition to the online, a very welcomed recent addition to the online plan room. If you want to learn about the specifics of the ROSIP insurance, and a really good thing to remember about this, and I hope it's being captured. If you are utilizing the owner-controlled insurance policy, and your GL, your general liability is in most instances audited, you need to make sure that the revenue on that contract is deducted from your GL audit because you're not utilizing your own insurance. So you do need to figure that into your bid, but just be aware to make sure that that gets communicated properly to your broker so that you are benefiting from those cost savings, if that makes sense. So we're going to look at the M8 job. And as always, my go-to is really the P pages. Okay, so new construction of a two-way maintenance vehicle. Oh, it's an access ramp, new retaining wall, lightage, drainage, concrete barrier wall, and ancillary work. So this might not be a vertical opportunity. This is all roadway. But let's just double check. That may be even the one. Is that the one that I put together? I just looked at the line items. Nope, that's the box culvert one. Okay. All right, so let's keep looking at this. We'll look at the P pages. See if it gives us any good info. So if I'm a sub, if I'm scouring this list to see if any of my items or any of my work's on here. And it doesn't look, this is definitely a roadway job all day. There's nothing vertical on here. So this is access roads. There is some landscaping, so there's an opportunity for landscaping subcontracting work.
And that's important to point out, because if we had just stopped on that introduction page and looked at it, it never said anything about landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
Until you came into the specifics that you now see there's some landscaping opportunities. So I guess the lesson to be learned on that one is to really come in and look at the line item requirements.
And as you can see too, they do make you work for it because it's listed by item, you know, numerically. So another tip, not to give you guys too much info, this number system is indicative of an IDOT specification number. So whenever it's numbers, like strictly numbers, this X, X is in the BDE, or it's a special provision. You see how all this has asterisks when it's like X, Z, J, like this is going to be in the special provisions, anything that comes back here. And sometimes that's the differentiation between this might be on a local road and this might be on the main line, for whatever that information's worth. So they, like I said, you do have to work for it a little and just make sure that you're getting a good picture of what your work is on the project.
For a company that does what Patrice does, Patrice, tell us again what it is you do.
We're a disinfecting spray service company. So we use electrostatic spraying and ultralight volume sprayers, and we use hospital grade disinfectant. So we go in, we're not janitorial per se because we're not hands-on wiping and vacuuming, etc. So we're kind of hands-off and fogging and spraying.
Mm-hmm. I think your specialty might best be covered in like a goods and services contract. And I will send I may have sent it previously, but I will send a link to that, and you can look at the look ahead too to see if there's anything relevant upcoming that's going to be advertising later this year that would have, you know, something that looks like it would match what your scope is.
Yeah, because we're such a, before this pandemic, it was really hard to explain what we did, and now everybody gets it. And it's like trying to make sure that we're positioning ourselves to, you know, get the work, to make sure we can do it. And then how do we get paid? Is that timely? But it's trying to find a niche, because are we under cleaning? Would we be a sub under like a cleaning or janitorial contract? Or are they starting to put something that is just specific for this?
You know, that's a really good question. And I don't know who specifically, but I know there's, you know, there's planning and conceptual people at the Tollway who are, I'm sure that, you know, are interested and open to talking about these type ideas. You know, they have maintenance facilities, they have their own, you know, once people are back to inhabiting, you know, things more regularly, but they have their own facilities as well. And, you know, reentry is going to be a huge thing, right? Like once the pandemic subsides and, you know, everybody has to be ready for it. So I'm going to do a little recon and see if I can figure out someone to put you in touch with to just, you know, broach that concept. I don't know if I'll be successful, but it won't be for lack of trying, I can promise.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That's the hard part, where to find the right person. And without, you know, it's sounding like you put a lot of work into it, but it's kind of like we honestly, like, I wish we were busier than we are, because so much competition came out and people are spraying really toxic things, and we're trying to get the word out to say, like, we have a hypoallergenic product that kills 99.999% without damaging everything, or that people are breathing in bleach. That's what's happening. So that's where it's, how do I make it efficient? But I appreciate any research. I appreciate that. Would be wonderful.
Yeah, maybe we'll connect after this too, because I think another agency that might be really interested in that might be the MWRD as well. So, you know, perhaps there's a few agencies that you could target with that type of concept, because I know it'll be in demand, and, you know, there's, you know, I know that both the Tollway and all the agencies really value the hypoallergenic component, and, you know, what our carbon footprint is and what we're putting out into the world. So
yeah,
I'll do whatever I can to help you make some connections.
It'll be wonderful.
Great.
Okay, how else can I be of service to the group? Are you guys sick of me yet?
Dana, I just wanted to share, because you were pulling up the M8, the maintenance facility, and the fiber optic. There are, both of those are going to have a pre-bid meeting tomorrow. The fiber optic one is at 10 a.m. and the M8 is at 10:30. So that's another area, if you have an interest in one of our contracts, is to, you know, attend one of the pre-bid meetings on that to get even more information.
Thank you for offering that. And those are always a really good thing to attend, just, you know, just to see how it works too, you know, because all the different, you know, engineering's represented, diversity's represented, and, you know, just to kind of learn who are the different players and how does it work, and, you know, is it a good chance, you know, things are different now, but is it a good chance to network, to see how people conduct themselves, to see who shows up. So it's definitely, it's a good experience at any tier level of contracting to participate in a pre-bid meeting.
Thanks, Diana, for sharing that.
Absolutely. More information, the better.
Guys, I apologize. I just got kicked off. What did I just miss? I'm sorry.
Nothing substantial, Aiden. We were just asking, there were a few questions asked, and she's still asking if there are questions that anyone might have over what, regarding what she's gone over already. We did go on onto the website and take a look at how to actually pull up an opportunity and go through that.
Yeah, I saw that. I missed Diane's comment. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just talking about, we have a couple of pre-bids meetings tomorrow, and one for the fiber optic one that's at 10, and then the one for the M8 facility is at 10:30 tomorrow. Pre-bid.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And I would definitely encourage everybody in the vertical space to really keep an eye on the advertised date for, what was it, the canopy work, which I think the first one comes out 2/4 in the letting schedule that Suzanne sends out. And that might be a good opportunity to also attend a pre-bid and learn a little bit more about those opportunities for the plaza modifications, because I do think that, just looking at the letting schedule, that maybe where the bulk of the vertical opportunities may be.
And I would venture to say that once Dana makes a connection for you, Patrice, there may then be some opportunity for you in those buildings once they get them either modified or reconstructed. Debbie, we've kind of seen there are quite a few there for you as a landscaper, and then Liliana with the janitorial. I think it's a matter of looking at what the opportunity is and just considering, will they need what you do? And I certainly think they will, particularly the area of post-construction cleanup. So I do believe there are going to be some opportunities there for all of you that are on the call this evening, particularly with this new letting that's come out.
We have been looking at that, Suzanne, so I'm interested in quite a few of them that I'm seeing on there. So I'm going to continue to follow through with those. But I do have a question for Patricia. Do you come to Rockford?
I wouldn't turn down any work as long as I can make some money.
Because we recently just had somebody come in and do our office and all of our vehicles, and what I felt I paid and what he told me he was doing doesn't add up. And I always want to make sure that my employees are safe, especially through the whole COVID, since we've been essential. So I'd be interested in talking to you and seeing about what you have to offer and seeing if we could maybe have you come in and check out and see if what he did was the right thing that he did. So
yeah, if you don't mind, yeah, I would definitely like to talk. We have since we do this full-time and professionally, we like our ranges, when we start quoting, it's about 20 cents a square foot. And we have a lot of people that are kind of shocked because they're like, you're really low, because Service Master or different companies are quoting 50 to 70 cents a square foot. And so there's a few different ranges. It depends on like our travel time, definitely the facility size. If it's tight quarters, like a lot of cubicles, that takes a lot longer. If it's an open space, so we always like to try and do an on-site quote to make sure that we're meeting everybody's expectations. And like I tell people, we're here to make a living, not a killing. So yeah, give me a call if there's a way that at least I could share my information to say this is what we do. Maybe that'll give you an idea. I don't know if he quoted you on square foot or flat, but that's just to kind of give you a quick answer.
Thank you. I'll definitely be in touch.
I'll send each of you the other's information tonight.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. Well, if there are no more questions or comments, Dana, thank you again for another great presentation. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you for the opportunity and great feedback.
I appreciate that you have given some great insights and looks into the tollway system, which is, of course, what we're all about, getting clients to a place where they can start submitting bids, and understanding that process is just so critical. So as I stated earlier, I'll be sending out the update to the letting, as well as the, what was the other piece I need? Oh, the recordings next week. There are a few things that you all owe me, and you know what those are because I've been sending you out emails asking for them. So the sooner you get them into me, that will allow us to move forward in doing the things that we have to do with our tollway contract. So unless there are no more questions, I'll say good night to everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.